Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Papa Boris, and this is the first video of a highly self-indulgent series. I'm going to be playing Guild of Dungeoneering, and I call this self-indulgent because I've actually done a complete playthrough of this game before, back in 2015 when the game came out, but I was looking over this game and I realized it's a deck-building roguelike, which I did not realize at the time. I knew it was a roguelike, I knew it was kind of fun, but I didn't realize, like, holy crap, it's a deck-building game. And it's not the first deck-building roguelike, that of course is Dream Quest, but I didn't play Dream Quest till like 3 years or something after I played this game, and so now looking back I realized that my old videos kind of suck, and I'm hoping I can do a better playthrough of this game now that I have the vocabulary to understand what this game really is at its core. So, with that in mind, let's go ahead and start a new game and talk about what this game is like. This will be a short video, or relatively short I hope, and we'll just explain some of the basic mechanics, do the tutorial mission, and that's why this is called Episode 0. We'll start the proper playthrough in the next one. So there's two different phases to this game. There's like your home base where you can buy stuff, which we'll talk about in the next video, and then there's the actual game where you send Dungeoneers out to dungeons. You have to complete a mission, and then if you do, you get a lot of gold. If you fail the mission, then you get a little bit of gold, and use the gold to upgrade your home base. So let's go ahead and do the tutorial mission. There's not a lot to choose from at the moment. We're just doing our first mission here with the chump, which is of course the crappiest dungeoneer. And once we get here, we'll explain some of the mechanics. Now, weirdly in the tutorial, the game plays your first turn for you, so I'm not going to do anything here. We'll just let the game do its thing, and then when we actually have control over things in the subsequent turns is when we will discuss some of these map building components of the game. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the first fight. There's, I guess, actually 3 phases to the game. There's like the home base phase where you upgrade your base. And then once you go send a dungeoneer into a dungeon, there's like the map phase of the dungeon, and then there's like the actual combat phase. So let's talk about how combat works. And it amazes me, I didn't really realize it was like a deck building game, but it like totally is. So you have a deck of cards, you have a hand of cards, you draw 3 cards at the beginning of combat, you play 1 after seeing what card your opponent's going to play. So this game actually predates the crucial twist that was used by Into the Breach to make that game so good, which is being able to see what your enemies are doing. So some of the symbols here, this symbol with the fist inside of red means physical damage, minus heart means you do damage to yourself, and then this symbol right here means you block. The fact that this card has a blue and a red component means you block both physical damage and magical damage with this block. You block 1 damage of either type. So I'm going to go ahead and play Cower, which means that what's going to happen is I'm going to block 1 of these damages, but 1 is going to get through, so I'm going to take 1 damage. And then the rubber ducky will deal 1 damage to itself. So I'll take 1, and the ducky will take 1. Now, one of the problems with this game is that when it was released in an unfinished state. So like these animations that you're seeing here, do this again. We're going to play Cower, block the anger, and it's going to take a damage. I'm going to take no damage. These animations of like what happens with all this stuff, they weren't there. So you'd each just play your cards, and then like hearts would increase or decrease. It really should have been released as an early access game. And I think the fact that it wasn't, I think the fact that, you know, it came out and you paid $15 for what was clearly not a very finished product is what made this game be, you know, not as well recognized or known as it might have otherwise been. Anyhoodle, your job in each fight is to get the enemy down to 0 hearts. Damage is dealt simultaneously, although it actually shows the monster doing things first and then you next. The damage is mechanically actually simultaneous. Any cards that you don't play stay in your hand. And you only start with a deck of 6 cards, so there's actually quite a bit of predictability and control during these fights, because whichever card you don't play, or whichever 2 cards you don't play, stay in your hand, and you're drawing 1 card from a very small deck. So we're going to go ahead and finish things off here. If you and the monster both drop down to 0 hit points simultaneously, that is considered a loss, and you're out of the dungeon. So because damage is dealt simultaneously, you cannot play a card that would reduce the monster to 0 at the same time that you would be reduced to 0. Now let's talk about loot. After killing a monster, you get to choose one of 3 loot cards. The level of the cards depends on the level of the monster that you just killed, and this is a really weak point of the interface. You can actually see the level of the card down here in tiny, scratchy, barely visible red font. So you can see these are all 1s. Now, cards can give you basic bonuses, like the straitjacket just increases your health by 1. But primarily what the equipment does is give you skills. So this pigeon nest, for example, gives you growth 1. The paper crown gives you holy 1. Now, when I first played the game, I was like, oh, the paper crown gives you Holy Seal, and the pigeon nest gives you Rekindle. But that is absolutely not true, and I'm ashamed of myself for doing such a bad job explaining how the mechanics work. This game has what appears to be a mechanic where equipment gives you cards. This is seen in games like Card Hunter or in some newer games like Trials of Fire and A Long Way Down, which are all deck-building roguelikes. But this game actually does it better, and this is one of the reasons why I think this game is underappreciated. I think if this game had been more widely known, more games, or like any games, would have stolen this mechanic, because I think this game does a way better job than any other game I've played at implementing the mechanic of equipment equals cards. Paper Crown does not actually give you the Holy Seal card. What it does is it gives you the Holy One skill. Every skill in this game has up to 4 ranks, and reaching a new rank in that skill gives you a new card, again, up to 4. So for example, right now, I have Holy None, because your character, unless you have some special ability, does not start with any skill. So when I take Holy One, I now have 1 rank in the Holy skill, and having 1 rank in the Holy skill gives me that Holy Seal card. If I already had 1 rank in the Holy skill, then it would be added to this Paper Crown, and I would now have 2 ranks in the Holy skill. So I'd have the Holy Seal from the other card, and I would also have whatever the card is for Holy 2. So there's an important strategic element here, which is that the 4 pieces of equipment that you wear, head, weapon, offhand, and body, obviously you could take ones that just give you a bunch of different skills, but you're probably going to be better off getting a lot that have the same skill so that you can tier up and get to the 2, 3, and 4 tier cards within a skill, which are substantially stronger, of course, than the tier 1 cards, which are, relatively puny by comparison. Now, there are 4 skills that are kind of physically based. There's the Blade, Crush, Armor, and Swift. And then there are 4 skills that have more of a magic theme. By the way, magic damage is represented by that blue starry type of symbol. And then the heart there means that you gain a hit point as opposed to taking a hit point and damage like the rubber ducky did. So the magic skills are Growth, Holy, Fire, and Arcane. So a big part of the game's strategy is deciding, do you have a plan going into the dungeon as to what skills you're going to try to get, or are you just going to take what comes and try to make the most of it? So here, let's go ahead and grab Holy One. So what this does is it blocks 1 damage of any type, and you gain a heart for every damage that is blocked. In addition, in this game, it's very important to note that you can actually heal above your maximum. So the starting hit points of 5, for example, for this character, are not a cap on how much health this character can have, which can sometimes be significant. And you can see here a summary of our skills. We have Holy One, and because we have the Holy One skill, we're getting that Holy Seal card. Every other roguelike that uses equipment as cards just has cards attached to a piece of equipment. Like this sword gives you this card. But having the system where equipment actually gives you skills dramatically improves the flexibility, and ultimately I find it to be a much more satisfying system. Anyway, in this game, each mission has a certain objective. This one's pretty easy, just defeating 2 more monsters. So let's go ahead and fight one. Now, in this phase of the game, I should mention, you play cards from your hand to add to the dungeon. This phase of the game could have been implemented a little bit better, because sometimes, you don't really have to do anything. I don't need to connect to any of these things. I can just keep putting monsters in the same basic corridor and just walking up and down and fighting them. If you don't like your hand, you can also just keep clicking the end turn button and just, resetting your hand until you get the cards that you want. But it's pretty straightforward. You just, play the cards and try to eventually achieve your objective. Now, the one thing to note is that you don't control your Dungeoneer. Your Dungeoneer acts according to an AI, which when the game first released was really bizarre. It seems like the developers did improve pretty substantially what the AI is like. So now your Dungeoneer is drawn to monsters of the same level that they are, because if you defeat a monster of your level, you level up, which gives you an additional hit point. And additionally, your Dungeoneer is drawn towards treasure. So if there's treasure on one of the monsters and not on the other, then your hero will more likely go toward the treasure. So you do have some predictability in how your Dungeoneer will react, but you don't directly control how they move. They will just do what they do once you click the end turn button after playing or not playing any of the cards you were dealt for that dungeon that turn. Okay, so some new symbols here. This symbol means the attack cannot be blocked, so if I played Holy Seal, it'd be a tragic waste of the card, because I would actually not block this damage, and I would not also get my heart, because this heart is contingent on blocking the damage. Now, this bat is a loner, which means that if it's in a dead end, it has 1 fewer hit point, so we'll just do a lucky hit here. We'll take 1 damage and deal 2 damage. And now, we can't block this again, because these two cards were in my opening hand, so they stayed there. But this new card I drew just does a damage, so we'll trade damage and kill this bat, because we had the health advantage at the beginning of the fight. So we level up, we gain a hit point, and now we get to take a new card. So Twig gives us Crush 1. Newspaper Hat gives Stupidity 1 and the Wise ability. Stupidity adds a blank card to your deck that does nothing, which is really bad. It's like a lot worse than it seems. It does give us +1 hand size, but of course that hand size is mitigated as soon as we draw the Stupidity card. And it also makes me lose my Holy One from my hat. So what I'll do here is I'll just take a Straight Jacket for 1 hit point. We'll keep things simple. And we collect 2 gold here. And then we can try to finish this mission. We have to just kill 1 more enemy to do it. Now this bat is not in a dead end, so it will have 4 hit points instead of 3. But that should be fine, because we leveled up. We got a hit point from our Straight Jacket and a hit point from leveling up. Okay, so here we'll do Holy Seal. This bat has a red shield that blocks 1 physical damage. Note the difference. This blocks 1 damage, either magical or physical, but this only blocks physical, and then there are blue shields that only block magical. So I'll do a Holy Seal. It'll block this magic damage and give me a heart. Notice it went beyond my initial hit point count. So we'll deal 2 damage and take 1 damage. See, these animations are very nice. And notice how the bats goes first, but mechanically they're happening at the same time. This will deal 1 magic damage to me and heal for each damage dealt, but I drew a cower, so I can block that and prevent the healing. And here I drew another cower, so I can do the same exact thing. I could have just been playing these punches, but I wouldn't have been making any progress because the monster would have been healing. If you are dealt damage down to 0 and then heal up from 0 on that same turn, you actually do live. So you can drop to 0 and then heal up from it. Okay, well, we drew the cower again. This bat is just rolling in drains. And now we're awkward, because every single one of these just is the same card, but the bat has a physical block. Luckily, I have a nice health advantage, so we can roll with these punches and finally trade 1 damage and kill this bat, completing the mission. Now, you can actually grind the game for gold, but the thing is, the bonus for completing a quest is so much bigger than the bonus that you get for, like, playing gold cards and stuff that it's not worth your time. You might as well just, like, keep playing the game, and you'll actually get gold faster. Alright, let's talk about battle scars. So battle scars are things that your adventurers pick up from just playing missions. This one is an early stage flesh wound, so the character actually has -1 hit point. Early stage means if you keep on playing with the character, though, you'll actually, like, this will actually evolve into something else. Sometimes they evolve into something better, sometimes something worse. I'm guessing this will evolve into something better since it starts off being a negative thing. There are battle scars, of course, that just give you positive things. Okay, so we're going to wrap this video up by explaining the base mechanics in more detail, because the game doesn't actually give you that much to do before the tutorial mission. And I am now saying that this is actually not a very short video, but whatever, we're going to roll with it. So, let's click the Expand Guild button and talk about expanding your base. So there's 3 different categories. Might, which is like physical-based stuff, Magic, which is magic-based stuff, and then Loot, which is used to add equipment to the in-game pool. So let's talk about each of these. In the Loot area, each of these upgrades essentially adds equipment that can be found during the run. So, for example, we talked about how when you kill a monster, you get a choice of loot, one of 3 options. The items that you have to choose from are the same level as the monster you just killed. So, killing a 3-level monster gives you much better options than killing a level 1 monster. What this does is add items to the pool. So for example, if you purchase the Curio Shop, then from this point forward, it becomes possible to find all these things. And you have to look really closely, again, at this terrible interface down here. With the 2, that tells you this Daisy Chain is a level 2 item, and this Winged Staff is a level 3 item. By contrast, the Bandana is just a level 1 item. And when you hover over them, you can see that, they add certain skills, like Holy 2, Arcane 1, this is also Holy 2, Arcane 1. This thing makes you blessed and gives you the Holy 1 skill, etc. So, you can look over them, and I do wish the game would just, have somewhere in the game, ideally here in this interface, but at the very least somewhere in the menu, where you could actually see all the skill trees. I think it's ridiculous that you have to, this is such a good game in many ways, in terms of, the transparency of what you can see, about your character's deck and abilities and stuff. I don't know why the developers didn't just throw in a way so you can actually see the 8 skills and what the 4 cards are for each rank of each skill. So a little bit of it at first is kind of mysterious, but that's what these things do. In the Magic area, there are 2 things that give you a blessing and 2 things that actually unlock a new class, and it's the same for the physical area, the might area. There's 2 things that give you a blessing and 2 things that unlock a new class. So when you unlock a new class, it's very straightforward. You can now, start a dungeon run with that class instead of whatever classes you currently have. So right now I just have the starting chump, but if I build this, I can now play missions with the mime. And you can actually see what each class's starting deck of 6 cards is, as well as what traits, if any, that they have. So that's pretty straightforward. And this will be the first thing I do. The other 4 things are the blessings. And the way that they work is that for the first 2 fights of a mission, you get a bonus. For this one, it's +1 health. For this one, it is +1 starting hand size. This one is +1 to your first physical damage that you deal. And then this one is +1 loot choice slot after the first 2 fights. The word after is incorrect. It's actually +1 loot choice slot for the first 2 fights. So kind of a bad typo to still be in the final build of the game. In the first row, all upgrades cost 50 gold. In the second row, all upgrades cost 500 gold. And in the third row, all upgrades cost a whopping 2,000 gold. So this is why, grinding a level and picking up 3 gold gems over and over and over is not the best way to make money. You should just progress the game and you'll make money a lot faster because you need a lot of money to get the higher tier upgrades. At the higher tiers, you unlock more loot, although it's not necessarily better, so this is very bizarre. You're paying 500 for these, but they're not necessarily better than what you got in Tier 1, so I'm not exactly sure how that really is working. The blessings become permanent, so instead of being just for the first 2 fights, each upgraded version of the blessing just becomes permanent, like your character just always has that ability. And the Tier 2 classes, which there are 4 of, are better, just objectively better than the Tier 1 classes. So you're not going to beat the game, with the mime. You'll eventually have to play with the Tier 2 classes. And the Tier 3 classes are better than the Tier 2 classes, substantially. So you'll eventually have to get those, because you're probably not going to be able to beat the game unless you're very good and very persistent with a Tier 2 class. At Tier 3, the shrines maintain the permanent bonus of the previous rank. In addition, they add something else. So this one, in addition to giving you +1 loot choice slot permanently, you actually start the game with a level 1 loot. This one makes it so that you start with the Crush 1 skill. This not only gives you a decent card, but it also makes it so that you get to Crush 4 sooner. So if you want to play with a Crush strategy, this is actually very, very good because you only need 3 Crush ranks to get the best Crush card as opposed to 4. This one gives you the 1 rank in the Holy skill, and this one gives you 1 rank in the Arcane skill. There's also a class hidden here, the Artificer. So this is in the loot area, there's only 3 loots in the 3rd tier, and 1 of the slots is for a new class. Now, finally, when you get things in a higher tier, you need 2 cards in the previous tier from that school. So you can't unlock the Barbarian, for example, unless you've got 2 Tier 1 Might things unlocked. And for the shrines, you not only need to have 2 things of the previous tier in that school, but you have to have the shrine from the previous tier. So you cannot get the permanent +1 health bonus unless you've already unlocked the +1 health bonus for the first 2 fights from the first tier. Okay, well that's a lot of talking about how the stuff works in here, so we'll actually start playing in the next video. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it. Please like it or subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.